Hello, everyone. This is Raising the New Earth. Hey, Brooke.
Hello. Good
Today
morning.
we're talking, good morning. Good morning. Today we're talking about fasting. So, fasting is defined as the complete abstinence from all substances except pure water in an environment of complete rest. So, to maximize the benefits of fasting, um, nutrient intake is discouraged and avoided, or some limited to 70 calories intake per day in a liquid form for ketosis to happen. Fasting has been known to be a very powerful and effective tool in any comprehensive program designed to promote restoration and maintenance of healthy lifestyles. It can help people get on or get back on track to healthful living. It is not a cure, but rather a process that can facilitate the body's own healing mechanisms. And it is really a gift to an overburdened body. It can be extremely effective at creating the the homeostasis in our internal environment where the body can do what it knows how to do best, which is to clean and heal itself. And we have places like the True North Health Center, for example, that are up. I think it's Sonoma Valley in California. And this place has been using water fasting as a tool to give the digestive system a rest while the immune system does its job. And it specializes in medically supervised 5 to 40 days of water only fasting. And the participants in that healthcare environment have experienced normalization of body weight, blood pressure, circulation, and beyond. Like there's people that have severe chronic illnesses that have been able to reverse a lot of harsh diagnoses, I would say. And their doctors have noted elevations in blood glucose, cholesterol, liver enzymes, inflammation markers are often rapidly corrected. So today we decided to focus on fasting because it has become such a trend thing to talk about. And it seems like everybody does intermittent fasting, everybody believes in fasting. And before we hop on this wagon, like another thing, Brooke and I really wanted to break it down for you what our experience has been studying it, especially from Dr. Zach Bush, what my experience has been like doing a dry fast, being raised in Israel, and how religion's looking at fasting beyond the physical or medicinal um, benefits that it holds. So Brooke, for you, so when we studied about fasting from Journey of Intrinsic Health, what resonated with you or didn't resonate with you?
Yeah, well, with you kind of mentioning that it's become kind of trendy and you hear a lot about intermittent fasting, I think that was in a sense where I was coming from before learning it through in Journey of Intrinsic Health, that like, okay, yeah, it's just one of those health fads, like not going to pay too much attention to it. And it wasn't until learning about it through the lens of JOIH that I really understood that sure, it is a trend in that people are talking about it more, but as far as it actually being a trend, no, it's been around for really, in a sense, you could say it's been around for the beginning of time, because when you look at how way back our ancestors of the way that they lived, there wasn't food available all the time.
Yeah.
So they very much did live in like a fasting type environment where it was they would gather their food, eat it, and then they may not go um, with food for hours, days, So
Mhm.
it actually is a natural rhythm within our body. And I think that um, coming from that lens, it makes sense that it's a powerful tool. You mentioned that our bodies are very overburdened, which they are, especially these days with all of the things that shouldn't necessarily be in our food, the things that we're exposed to in our environment. So it makes sense that we're taking an ancient practice, something that's been around forever, but using it in a very modern way to allow our bodies time to rest from all of the things that we're putting in. And it gives the space for our bodies to clean up, in a sense. I mean, that is essentially what it's doing. It's going in and cleaning up, and allowing our bodies to kind of naturally take care of some of the burden that it's experienced. So yeah, to me, I had never, and I still have not done a fast for like even a day. I don't think I've really even fasted a day, except maybe in times I've been sick. So I'm really excited for you to kind of share your experience with prolonged periods of fasting. But as far as intermittent fasting, where you're looking at just having a feeding window within a certain time of day, I had never really done that before. But then looking at how I just naturally eat and my rhythms, I tend to do that. Especially now, I eat early for dinner, and then a lot of times I'm not hungry at the beginning of the day. So I just kind of had naturally found that rhythm within my body. So I found that really interesting. I was like, well, without even trying, I really was giving myself that time and that rest. So I found that really cool. That being said, though, I still do want to experience a water fast. I plan to do it hopefully this spring, like even within the next month or so. I just want to make sure I find a good time where I really can commit to it and go deeper. But with that, I would love to just hear your, because you had, fasting experience, and just how, what were your insights from Journey of Intrinsic Health, and kind of what has your experience been overall with fasting?
Yeah. So before we dive into that, I love what you said, and what you said completely resonated with me. So in the past, many health problems were associated with nutritional deficiencies. But today, the majority of the health problems are really associated with dietary excess in general. This is like, you know, I love defining it as this is the real pandemic of being obese and malnourished at the same time. And add to that the use of tobacco and alcohol, caffeine, refined, ultra processed food products. I mean, just go around the supermarket, you get overwhelmed by the amount of crap that is being offered to us on a daily basis, and the small little section of really healthy food coming from the land. So adopting that health promoting diet and lifestyle may reduce the need for some traditional medical treatments, and but many people find great difficulty making these diet and lifestyle changes, being trapped or caught in a pleasure trap. So a properly conducted fast can help getting back on a pattern that is more suitable, more healing, more serving of what the person actually needs, rather than what they're stuck doing day in and day out. So knowing that, this is why I fast. So I fast whenever I see almost like an opportunity window for me to dive in deeper into my intrinsic knowingness. So for example, the last 5-day fasting that I did was after Valentine's Day, and I don't like candy. Luckily for me, I don't like that type of sweets. I do like dark chocolate, but the kids started bringing all these sweets from school, and I tasted this one, I tasted that one, and I realized I'm going down on like I'm diving into a hole per se of a place that I didn't want to be in. And I realized that, okay, so then I crowded out that ultra processed sweets, the few that I did have. And then my body was like, okay, so just have stevia. And for me, stevia works. But then I put so much stevia in it, I realized that hunger trigger has been triggered and that reward pathway is on. And I needed to break that pattern, because this was not me. That was like, an old voice say, yeah, just go down spiraling that route, which I didn't want to do. And so I fasted. And honestly, the tools that Dr. Zach Bush has given us are make all the difference for me, because growing up in Israel, when when a female turns 12 and a boy turns 13, we start fasting. We're not going to get into the reasons why we do that. The Islam also does that during the Ramadan, 30 days of fasting from sunset, um, from the morning till sunset, and then they eat a big meal. For Judaism, it's 24 hours of dry fast. And that was really hard for me growing up. Always so hard for me. Dry fast felt brutal to my body. Literally, you saw your body shrinking, and everybody's moody around this time of Atonement Day, Yom Kippur. Um, the it didn't feel right for my body until I came across water fasting. And then when I needed to fast, I dabbed into water fasting. That felt completely different. And now with some of the pointers that Journey of Intrinsic Health gave us, the fasting seems like such a celebratory time of rest and innate wisdom and rejuvenation that I really look forward to it. On top of doing intermittent fasting, like you said, you're doing it so intuitively because you're an intuitive woman. And as a matter of fact, breakfast is what it is. You're breaking a fast. So hopefully you don't eat all night, and you do let your digestive system rest, and you do let your immune system to do its job and repair if needed. And then you break the fast with a healthy breakfast. So that is really intermittent fasting. That's what it is. You just, your window of eating is the normal window of eating, and then you go back to eating again in the morning. So for me, things like making sure that I add some high quality sea salt, such as Himalayan sea salt or Celtic sea salt, into my water with lemon throughout my fasting day is super helpful. I also do, I don't do soy. Soy doesn't agree with my body, but there's miso paste. I do chickpea miso paste, and I put a few tablespoons of that in a big jar, a big mason jar with some hot water. And that on its own has so much healing and so many salts that allow me to not feel as dehydrated as I did before discovering water fasting. So these two things I do regularly. I drink throughout the day, that, lemon water with salt. I also sometimes I'll add something that we got introduced to through Dr. Zach Bush, which is emu oil. So that kind of helps me with fat intake and not to feel super hungry. So these three things really have improved my overall and general feeling while I fast, to make it really a time that I look forward to.
That's it. It always is so interesting to me that like you had done the dry fast and then adding the water, just the difference that it made, because especially learning about hydration through Journey of Intrinsic Health, which we have a whole podcast on hydration. So I think that listening to that too will also give the appreciation of just how it makes sense that being able to add in the water, and especially like you talking about having the sea salt and the miso paste, like being able to make sure that you got those electrolytes so that your cells are actually getting hydrated, that it would make such a difference to the fast. And going back, I think it's interesting how you talked about, in all these spiritual traditions, that fasting has always been a part of that. And if you think of what fasting actually does, like you're removing stimulus, you are allowing yourself to come into like a greater place of stillness, and therefore it makes sense that you're going to connect into a deeper place from removing the distraction of eating, like both from like the physiological standpoint of just constantly kind of becoming hungry. And that's what I hear all the time. It's like there is that initial, the surge of ghrelin and the hormones that kind of have to stabilize, where you do get those hunger pains, but once you ride through that goes away. And so it's very interesting to me that you can look at, again, the perspective of physiologically what it's doing. You can look at hormonally how it's leveling everything out, how your body is resting and moving through things, and then also just how mentally you're able to move away from the distraction of, I need something to eat, what's my next meal going to be, and move into a deeper space. So I think that that's it makes sense that it promotes an inner stillness essentially through fasting, and I think that's really cool. As the emu oil too, is that was a Zach Bush recommendation, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that just that just to have the fats there to satiate any sort of hunger? Is that?
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And Dave Asprey, that also wrote a book, Fast This Way. So in his book, he talks about a prebiotic that, he's no longer he's sitting, I think, on the board of advisors for Bulletproof Coffee, but he recommended his thing that was a prebiotic fiber of some sort that you add to your coffee. So the trendy difference between fasting for the sake of ketosis, and to me it seems really trendy because that's not the only point of it, and fasting for the sake of relieving your body from diabetes to cancer. So in their way, you can still have coffee and it's not going to count towards it's not going to break the fast. And the way that I view it, it is still a stimulant. So if you're going to clean your body, clean your body. This is not a cleansing effect on the body. It's just another addiction. That is my personal and professional opinion about coffee. So why don't you let your body get off what it may want to get off of, but didn't have the tools to do so. So he recommended prebiotic that I did try. So I don't drink coffee, I drink chicory. So I did try the first time around before starting Journey of Intrinsic Health. I find it to be somewhat helpful, but definitely not as helpful as the emu oil and the miso paste that I do as a chickpea paste. Those elements are so much fun to experiment with because you really don't feel it. I don't feel as hungry as I did in previous attempts that I had. Well, the first day is hard anyways, because it's, your old mind is talking to you and there's like, what is going on? I'm not going to get fed. Like your body is in a little bit of a stress mode. So the first day is always hard. But when you find that window of opportunities to do that, that is the time to dive in and try. And even if it's like a 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, and I don't think it should be unsupervised. If you have any diabetic issues, blood pressure issues, or any severe chronic illness, I don't think it should be unsupervised. I think you should do it with a nutritionist or a health coach of some sort that can help you through that process. You don't want to faint. You don't want to overwork yourself. You don't want to necessarily be driving all day around if you haven't done that before, or if you haven't primed your body to do so. And priming your body means, uptake your magnesium, your water, your hydration. You need to be in an optimal place in order to start a fast. And that's why I don't think it's for everyone. And I don't think that long periods of time should be done unsupervised.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And just because it may not be right for you right now doesn't mean it's forever that it wouldn't be. But yeah, I think that certain medical conditions, and you definitely would want to be under the supervision of a doctor before starting a long-term fast.
Yeah.
And going back to the point of like you with coffee, it also brought up the point, and you were also talking about the stevia and the sugar. Another benefit, I think, is that it allows you to uncover those places where you're maybe unhealthfully addicted. Again, that's that biophysical, the cravings that it's not just a mental thing, but giving your kind of coming with the mentality that you are giving this up allows you to override those physical cravings that you're having. because
Yes.
you're committed to this, and then you're getting into that deeper understanding of like, okay, my body really doesn't need this. What can I do instead?
Right.
Where can I go? And that is really beautiful. Yeah. And then
Right.
even from going back to the intermittent fasting, and just kind of to explain the different, it's essentially the same, and you might be better to explain this, but intermittent fasting is, just to back up, intermittent fasting is essentially taking a 24-hour window, and of that 24 hours, you're giving yourself a feeding window of, some people it's 8, some people it can even stretch to 12. You could still get those benefits. And then on the flip side, or not the flip side, but of a longer extended fast is what we've been talking about that Noah has done, where you're going at least one day, there's one day fast, or people have fasted up to weeks and months, really without food. So what's kind of really become trendy is this intermittent fasting. And by doing that, you're still giving your body the break of eating, where it can really rest and move through autophagy, which is essentially being able to go in there and allow your body to kind of clean up some of the things that aren't needed, as far as like toxins and excess estrogen. Even, I think that the benefits are there. So from my perspective of intermittent fasting that I kind of have been intuitively doing, one huge benefit that I've seen, that I've kind of had, that I've made a more intentional effort with, is the coffee. I would always drink coffee and put cream in it as well. And that's breaking your fast, because you have the calories. And hormonally, I was like very jittery when I would do that. So I was like, I really want to, I'm already kind of doing it intuitively. I just need to move my coffee back. So I had done this before, but now I like implement the hot water with lemon and instead of the coffee in the morning. So I can kind of extend that time where I'm not doing any sort of stimulants, the coffee stimulant. And when I do that, I don't need as much coffee, because I think for me too, it was like the ritual of having something warm was a big piece of it too. So I like, it's interesting how there's even benefits there. That just makes it easier, where it's like, okay, I'm not giving up coffee, but I'm just allowing my body a little bit more time before I take that coffee in the morning. And I've seen like huge differences in how that makes for me. Yeah.
And in general, when you start your morning with warm lemon water, which is an ancient Ayurveda way of cleansing the toxins from the night before and helping your liver essentially to do its job. When you start your day like this and you're able to postpone the stimulant that may or may not be good for you, my professional opinion is no, it is not good for you. But the trendy research will come up and say, no, it is good for you, because, well, if you are an anxious person, if you are addicted to your coffee in the morning, most likely it is not good for you. If you can stick to 1 cup of coffee a day and you don't have anxiousness or anxiety or depression or anything that creates a codependency, then you can do coffee. But most people don't know how to balance. That is our problem as human beings. We don't know balance. That's why, we did an episode about centenarians, and those are the people that are able to live past 100, because they have found their balance in faith, in community, in the way they eat and the way they move. The majority of us, this is like my their way of living is on my vision board, because balance is really, really hard to find. So that's what I would say, and that's what I say to my clients. If you are completely dependent on your Starbucks or on your homemade coffee, then you need to re-examine that relationship. Break that pattern. How do you break the pattern? Exactly what you said. Let me start my morning with warm lemon water that will actually be beneficial for your liver and your body, rather than the coffee, and push it a little bit more. So for me, that's exactly what I do. I do lemon water I wait 20 minutes and I do my celery juice or other green juices, because I know, bar none, these two things are really good for my body. And then I push those things that are not 100% great for my body, but I do bring it in because life is a matter of balance. And you did mention the autophagy fasting. So for fasting, it starts at 17 hours. For the gut reset fast, it is the 24 hours. For the fat burner fast, it's within the 36th hour. The dopamine, which is the pleasure reset fast, 48 hours. The immune reset fast has to happen when it's more than 72 hours.
Mm.
So even though we see the breaking of the patterns within 24 hours, in order for the immune to reset itself, it has to be more than 72 hours, which is super interesting. And yes, as you said, intermittent fasting can be 12 to 16 hours, the most popular style of fasting. But again, if you're concerned about your cortisol level, your stress hormone, we're going to talk about that because it coincides with the ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. And that hunger hormone has 4 cycles a day. So something that I notice is that as women, with all due respect to David Asprey, he's great in what it does. There's a doctor out there. She's actually a chiropractic doctor, but she has a great knowledge about hormones and female body in general. And she wrote a book. So her name is Dr. Mindy Pelz, and she wrote a book, just came out, called Fast Like a Girl. And in that book, which is the first book for fasting for women, she outlines a strategy for optimizing the healthful impact of fasting according to our hormonal cycles. So even for those who no longer have a cycle, like we said in the episode with Jen Perel, we are still synchronized with that cycle, internal cycle. So she wrote a book, and for those of you that are interested in learning more about fasting, that's both Brooke and I are currently reading this book, and I think it's fascinating because it really takes on our perspective, because most research has been done in university for white young male adults. Hello, what about us? So she's really taking a deeper dive and allowing us to be in that picture to see, okay, what happens if you just got your period? What happens if you're ovulating? Shouldn't you eat? So the consensus is that if your body tells you to eat, you eat. And you don't necessarily want to be a chronic intermittent faster either, as Dr. Zach Bush called it, meaning you don't want to go so he said, it's 2 weeks of intermittent fasting. Then you can break that pattern by eating something in the morning. And then you can hop back on to that intermittent fasting cycle. So take everything into consideration. It's not a matter of depriving your body or restricting your body. It's a matter of listening to your body. So if you find any patterns that you no longer want to have in your life, then one of the ways to break that pattern would be through intermittent fasting or long period of fasting.
Yeah. I love how you say it as it's a breaking of a pattern.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point too. I love that Dr. Mindy Pelz wrote this book, because I think you hear either things, either women who are kind of doing the Dave Asprey approach and intermittent fasting, or on the flip side, it's whoa, no, women shouldn't be doing this. Women should not be fasting like this. They have a completely different hormonal cycle. And it's beautiful to see that actually they can do it. Women can do it, but might want to do it a little bit differently. And how wonderful, just and go back and listen to the episode with Jen Perel, because we talk about this as well, but that you can actually sync it with your cycles, where you're creating biodiversity with your eating patterns. So and that's another kind of thing that you can use this as a tool. And, just like it's so great to create biodiversity within your microbiome, and that you're exposed to all different kind of environments, and just how diversity is good, how wonderful that you can also know that intermittent fasting, or this way of eating, is not oh, this is what I do all the time, that right. You can actually use it to like sink in deeper to yourself. So yeah, I think, and it's that the best times to, if you are going to intermittent fast, the best times to kind of really be doing that are right after you've menstruated, like the beginning of your cycle, the luteal phase. And then as you move more to, you know, starting your in your cycle, while you're on your cycle, you really want to be more in the pattern of grazing and allowing yourself to kind of give your body what it needs when it needs, rather than depriving it. So, and you can learn more about that. Yeah. But, and I think too, I had never seen those numbers before, but the different amounts of a fast will kind of move into different benefits within your body. And that at the longer end, you really start to see immune system benefits. And so I think that, you know, we're now seeing like research with using fasting for cancer and are being very successfully done. And it makes sense that, you know, that when you, as you fast longer, it's giving your body the time to get into those areas to really clean that up. Do you know specifically kind of like what, just with autophagy and what's going on there, like what's happening within your body that is allowing those benefits to happen?
So I know that some of them, you said something about the idea of fasting. It's also the idea of reminding your body and your mind and your spirit that they are brilliantly designed to, what happens is they mobilize stored fat and toxins out of your liver and out of the central peripheral fat storage compartments. So that's in essence what is happening. So for us to think about this only being a physical thing would be a disservice to what it does, because while you're breaking your patterns, you will have these noises of, oh my God, where will my next meal come from? And that probably has to do with, you know, what you just said before, our ancestors maybe not having the next meal all plated out in front of them and having that, you know, the survival mechanism. So if you are finding yourselves with, you know, that clutter, and that clutter will subside after the first 24 hours, which is the amazing thing about it. Like that noise that we keep hearing in our mind from our, you know, from our sympathetic nervous system will subside. And as you bring yourself to a centered space, as you allow yourself to some, you know, meditative time, and you can close your eyes, you can just ask yourself which emotions are tied to your feelings, and which memories are tied to food, right? And which, and then you can start working on clearing the benefits or that previous programming about our relationship to food. And then we need to remind ourselves that our bodies can do it, and we can do it with our bodies. So I work a lot with I work as a holistic dietitian with kids and young adults 12 to 30 with food and mood disorders. So those are kids and young adults that have ED, eating disorders, and they have depression, severe depression, anxiety. And oh my God, are they triggered around food? So there's a lot of correspondence to that fight or flight survival mechanism, even around a smell of a certain food. So if there's a smell of chicken, and this is something that their mom or their dad deprived them of, or maybe it's something that they're missing, then they will gravitate towards that chicken, whether they like it or not. Right. And this is how strong our relationship to food is. For me, if I smell like Middle Eastern spices on something, my nose will lead me to where it's from, like immediately. And it's not necessarily that I like it, but it's my previous programming about my relationship to food, right? Whether it's pizza, and when you find yourself doing, you know, beer and pizza on a, I don't know, Friday evening, maybe it's something to crowd out. Maybe it's something that no longer serves you. So sit with yourself, ask yourself, how is it serving you? Like, do you still want it in your life? right? And these
Yeah.
are the things we're crowding out more than the storage of the fat and more than the toxins out of the central and peripheral uh, 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 sidings. We're also crowding out old programming and old chatter that we need to change, that we need to renew. We need to hit the reset button. That's what I feel every time I do a fasting. I'm just going to hit the reset button and go back to what is homeostasis for my body. And you can do that. You can do it. Dr. Zach Bush recommends doing it quarterly. You can do it more than that. I don't do it quarterly. I do it probably every 7 months or so, 6 months. So
I
yeah.
I love that you say that like they're so triggered around food and really using that as like a tool to understand better, because when you're talking about like any sort of personal growth work, that's such a way in to really understand is like, what are you triggered by? And I often am just thinking about that from like the words that people say or situations, but you can also extend that to food and understand that food carries such like a powerful, that scent especially is tied so heavily to memory and to specific emotions. And when you bring that awareness to that, yes, when you smell chicken, it does something, deeper than just like, oh, I want chicken, that there's actually something tied to that. Then there's so much you can learn about yourself, and it makes sense. Then again, going back to that inner stillness and using fasting as a way to just quiet your mind, because yeah, you might get those triggers, but when you're in a fasted state or you're that's what mentally, that you've prepared yourself to like, I'm knowing that my mind is going to go places, but I'm going to just listen to my mind and hear what it has to say, but know that I'm not going to like allow it to lead me down there. That just because my mind is having a thought doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
knowing that like every couple of hours there's something else, to answer your previous question. Every couple of hours there's something else going in our body. So like for the first hour, first 4 hours after we eat, it's known as the anabolic growth phase. And this is your body using up the energy you literally just ate to power your current activity and for cellular and tissue growth. And then there's something else happen within 4 to 16 hours. And this is like the catabolic, or some people call it the breakdown phase. And then after that, you have within the first day of fasting, 16 to 24 hours. This is like once you pass the 16-hour mark, then the glucose in your cells and the glycogen in the liver and muscles, they start to rapidly dwindle. And that causes you to burn stored fat in order to keep up with your body's need for energy, right? And this is also called as metabolism efficiency. So this is something that we want to strive for. And then after you pass that 1 day or 24-hour fasting, then you enter what everybody's talking about, which is a state that's called ketosis, right? Which is where you're reliant on burning your fats stored for energy, right? And as fat cells start breaking down for energy, your ketone bodies are then created and released into the bloodstream. So everybody talks about ketosis, but there's so much more. Like there's thousands of other benefits than just the ketosis. And I personally know people that are being put on a ketogenic diet in order to lose weight, but their ND or MD or whoever is putting them on it neglects the psychological element of it. That's why I love working in a multidisciplinary setting, like the job that I'm working for right now. You have to acknowledge the psychological connection and the, like we said, the programming to food. Being on ketosis and being on ketogenic diet in order to solve a food issue is really doing a disservice to how powerful our mind is. And that particular person that I have in mind, that person just does it again and again and again. And yet they are still experiencing obesity. They're still experiencing unhealthy relationship to food. So yes, you can break that pattern, but if you can't rely on just one thing, and that will be the physical aspect. Oh yeah, just go on ketosis for the next 72 hours, or don't eat. So not eating is the easy part for that individual that I have in mind. But it's the going back to that chaotic physical realm that we are part of that is the hardest thing for them. That's when they find their comfort in food. So you have to look at it from multidisciplinary platforms. You have to look at it psychologically. You have to look at it physically. You have to look at it beyond the trend that is currently representing. Because the bottom line is that fasting is a powerful tool for improving the body's longevity, and it can really be transformative to one's health. But it has to be done with the right tools. And I would say added tools of sitting down, journaling, like we said, what no longer serves me? What can I benefit from? How did that make me feel? And let it resonate really hard, because if it made you feel better than you've felt before, then maybe it's worth entertaining the idea of having it staying there for longer. And then how do you do that? Probably with working with a nutritionist, maybe hypnotherapist, a health coach, to work on that and to release some of those triggers that are pulling you back to that pleasure trap.
Yes, all that you said, that is so important and so true, of taking that holistic lens, because yeah, like you said, like for so many people, it can be the easy part to
Right.
not eat and put your body in the ketosis. But what happens when you're not doing that again and you just go back to the same patterns that were there before? So if you can take that time to, like you said, journal and really understand on a deeper level where some of those patterns are coming from and where they stem from, then that's where you're getting that like powerful catalyst to change behavior,
Right.
not just like in that particular time, but ongoing as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So true. And I think that's where so often people find themselves in the pattern of like, and this does become something that could just look at a trend, like, oh yeah, I tried that one time, that fasting thing, and worked for the time, but it's, again, you have to realize that it's deeper aspects than just like doing it that one time and seeing what happened. So
Right. It's far more than increasing the number of ketones, your body is making. So it's far more than that. It's a lot more important than that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to kind of different tips that you have for fasting, and especially the hydration, I know you've mentioned that like float tanks and certain things like that can help with if you're going through a fast, but yeah, what do you see like as other tools, I guess, for fasting
Yeah.
that are helpful?
Float tanks are incredible. And we did an episode about, wasn't it part of our hydration episode, I
It
think?
was, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes sense because it's allowing your cells to still be hydrated, which is going to make you more successful in being able to go without food because your cells have what they need. Correct?
Right.
Again.
Right.
Yeah.
And we want to keep hydrating, and it's really hard to find ourselves being dehydrated while we fast. And so adding that salt, high quality salt, not ionized table salt or whatever. No, like
Right.
high quality Himalayan or Celtic sea salt, gray salt into our water with lemon will help, charge electricity in our body, will help hydrate our body. If you don't have access to a center that provides float tanks, you can actually do it in your own bath. You can buy salt flakes, little magnesium flakes, or even Epsom salt, and just have 2 cups of that into your bath and sit there for a few moments. Let it really hydrate your skin. If you have saltwater pool, if you have saltwater jacuzzi, these are all things that can be super duper helpful. And also, if you are deciding to get off caffeine, when you're doing the fast or even just intermittent fasting, then just, you know, introduce your body, or reintroduce your body, I should say, to some really delicious herbal teas and enjoy them, indulge in them while you're not super distracted into the habit of eating. So hold on to that warm water, choose your favorite mug, remind your body that you can do it, and remind your thoughts that your body is doing it beautifully. So, just experiment with things that you haven't experimented before, and know that you are doing a huge service to your body that wants to heal you from within. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as intermittent fasting goes, I think it's also important to note that yes, people, I mean, I think that kind of I don't want to say gold standard, but like people who really do it regularly, like have a tendency to have just an 8-hour feeding window or some, maybe even less than that. But even if you start with maybe just like 12 hours and try to connect it in with your natural rhythms. Like I mentioned that for me, I was kind of naturally doing it, but I think a big piece of that was from having a baby, and we now eat really early, like 5:30. That to me sets me up for success because I'm eating so early. Then I'm naturally kind of like giving myself that break at the end of the day, and then through resting, where honestly now when I eat late, like 7:30 or 8 p.m., I don't sleep as well. And even in the morning, I find that I'm actually hungrier when I eat later, because I think that my body's just in that like, oh yeah, I like this food. Like
Right.
I've had food, like give me more.
Yeah.
So so I think that's important to note, that it's like find ways that it could work for you. Or maybe you are a night owl and you do need to eat later. I know you mentioned your mother-in-law like has a different way that it works for her. But it's like finding what your natural rhythms are, and then how you can tap into that, and then maybe find ways from there to extend it longer.
Yeah.
So
And for those that are concerned about the cortisol, the stress hormone rising, so I had a period of high cortisol AM, which means that the cortisol in the morning was high. So there's something to be said about the ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. So there is a relationship to the quality of sleep that someone had the night before that is combined with the time of the sunlight. So the ghrelin shows up around 4 times a day. So it shows up around 4 a.m., around 10 to 11 a.m., around 5 to 6 p.m., and then 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. So the short-term stress that's managed through an 18-hour fast is very different phenomenon than this typical pattern of late breakfast, late lunch, and late dinner that every American family is faced with. So the trick is that we can play into the system, and to use that growth hormone as it spikes after the ghrelin load and signals the epinephrine, I think it's called epinephrine. So if we do skip breakfast, the norepinephrine and the epinephrine pressed around 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. So if we train our body to not consume any food in the midst of that stress, but rather let that wave of stress hormone leave and start to diminish ghrelin, then it returns to its baseline. So that's the trick. Mm-hmm. So when we go to that, when the new fresh surge happening for our lunchtime, for example, and we address that before the stress hormone ghrelin turns on, then we get this, what Dr. Zach Bush calls cleanup phase of stress. So if you had that single spike in the morning of stress in the morning, then you can graze throughout the afternoon, eat lunch, then you break the fast, eat another snack in the afternoon, get in an early dinner, and go to sleep. Now you got 18 full hour cycle of rest for the gut and a lot of other mechanism for the immunity between 6 to 7 p.m. intake to noon the next day, which is your intermittent fasting. So that can be translated into 5 days of intermittent fasting pattern where you skip the breakfast, but you don't eat at that stress point that we talked about, right? And then when your body is ready, you can perhaps, try doing longer periods of fasting, maybe a full 24 hours, maybe just 2 days, and then see where it takes you. So instead of that, your body can relax and say, oh, this is, the chronic pattern. But instead it knows now that it has plenty for the day, and it always comes in low stress state after the surge of the stress in the morning. So you're going to ride that curve of norepinephrine and epinephrine for, exercise psychology, and you can increase muscle mass building rather than for food intake that we normally do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's a good point to make, that distinguishment between the difference of like just eating a late breakfast when you're getting that natural ghrelin surge of 10 to 11. And the other point to that too is a lot of times when you're riding that ghrelin surge, you're most likely probably going to lean towards the wrong kind of breakfast,
Right.
something that's going to spike your blood sugar really quick because you're like, I'm hungry. I just need to
Right.
eat something. And your body's more likely to kind of crave those high carb, like quick energy type things. So
Exactly.
yeah. So when you ride it out and just wait till your body kind of gets to a baseline level. And then it gets easier in the sense that you are training your hormones essentially to know, like, don't freak out. Food is
Right.
coming. Yeah, it's you're okay. Not eating right now. Yeah.
That's why something that I like doing, and for me that allows me to intermittent fast when I feel that my body needs it, is what you said, like pushing that coffee, or for me it's the chicory, a little bit later, and then I try to go work out in the morning. So whereas if I were home or working from the home office, I would be definitely having breakfast, but not because I'm hungry, because I'm either bored, don't have enough to do, or I'm at home, so there's easy access to food. The fridge is right there, like 10 steps away. So for me, I like working out in the morning. So after I drop off the kids at school, I go work out, I do my 45 minutes, I'm back. Then I do my green juice or celery juice, let that go through my digestive system, GI tract. And then I can choose if I want to have breakfast, because I battled my ghrelin, my hunger hormone, by releasing amazing endorphins, some serotonin, and now I'm ready, and even some dopamine, right? The pleasure hormone. And now, if I'm really hungry, now I can eat. And that usually comes to like 11 a.m., which is why weekends are so hard for me, because I'm home. It's like, oh my God, that's so hard. So, and it's okay. You can have family life and
right. Well, and then you can kind of look back at that biodiversity of eating, that it's okay. Like maybe what works best is to fast during the week.
Right.
And then in the weekends, you're more in kind of a grazing place where, And so true too with the exercise. It's again, like you're on looking at what's actually happening within your body and the hormones, like it's making sense that the exercise is what's kind of like taking you through that ghrelin surge. And then also just from a distraction standpoint, I mean, if you're going to go and work out and, you're not around food to eat it. So it's finding those ways where you can set yourself up for success in doing this.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And another thing, I don't know a lot about this. I want to dig deeper into this at some point, but for those like myself that really enjoy a cup of coffee, I know there's benefits too to like timing the caffeine with your working out, like that you do it either like, I think it's either right before
as an energy.
Like, because it quickly kind of does, gives a boost. So it's like if you're going to choose to do the caffeine route, then you're at least finding a way for it to kind of work with your natural.
And that's hormones. Also something to be said about balance. Like, again, if you're 100% dependent on your coffee, then it is your addiction.
Yeah.
Right. If you are 100% dependent on going to the gym and work out for 4 or 5 hours, then this is your addiction. That's your dopamine hit. Right. We all have our dopamine hits, whether it's, some people have pornography, some people have video games, some kids have video games. That's a dopamine hit. So if you can find a way to not have it have a hold on you, then you win. So have that coffee not having a hold on you. Maybe change how
Yes.
you drink it, maybe break that pattern, right? So it's not a matter of being 100% all the time. We are not robots. We are human beings. Of course, we're going to have our previous programming and cravings and desires. Yes, it's part of life. It's beautiful. Just question yourself. Ask yourself if this is what I need right now at this stage. I used to drink a lot of coffee when I was nursing. That's the only way that I could keep up with the babies. So after I realized that I no longer need it, I was like, I'm just not gonna do it. And then I started having like jittery hands, like obviously it's not agreeing with my body. So it's not serving me.
Yeah.
So
Such a
find
good
what
point.
works for you. Find it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, with caffeine or with anything too, that's what I've found to be so helpful is what kind of keeps me in check with my relationship with caffeine is that I give myself breaks, and I'm probably due for one like every few months. I just like, okay, a week without coffee. And if I feel like I'm suffering from like huge headaches and it's really hard for me to get through the day, then I know my relationship had already
Right.
gotten off balance with caffeine and
Right.
that I really need this time to get myself back in check. So I think you could use that with anything. Alcohol is another big one
Yep.
too. And that's, something I've been kind of questioning with my relationship. It's like, it's fine to have, but like, is it serving you or are you serving the vice, whatever it is?
Yeah.
So to be able to like just have that awareness and have that intention is powerful to
Absolutely.
really keep in
Absolutely.
check anything
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you're doing. Yeah. Yeah. What else
I think
do
we
we
covered most of it.
yeah. Yeah.
It's a big topic. That's a big topic, but I think it's really important to figure out for yourself if it's something you want to experiment with and to go beyond the ketogenic diet and beyond, releasing ketones. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to also, I think, recognize that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, that you're
right.
either like, I'm an intermittent fasting person or I'm not, that you can kind of find what works for you within there. And
Right.
the biodiversity of eating patterns is powerful. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So bye everyone. This was another fun episode.
It was. And that one other thing, we do need to go deeper into it. I think that we should have other episodes where and with like maybe even getting Dr. Mindy Pels or
Yeah.
yeah, someone who and talk even more about it.
Yeah. We'll
How
reach
much to
out to
talk
her.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So bye everyone.
Bye.